Hello there and welcome to the Bicycle Diaries. So it's been a bit of a slow start so far this week. I've just returned from a very shortish ride with my cycling chum John. Now John cycled all the way down from London to visit family locally, whereas I just jumped in the car, drove 15 kilometres up the road to a place called Petersfield. I parked up and then I rode up Stony Hill, met John at the top, and then we rode back down into Petersfield. The climb up Stony Hill is another one of my local favourites. It's about 6 kilometres long with an average gradient of about 5%, with some pretty steep bits at about 9 or 10%. So it's actually quite a tough climb, but the road surface is really nice and the scenery is amazing. It reminds me a little bit of some of the Pyrenean climbs that I've seen, because you kind of look down into the valley below and see all the little houses. In fact, locally it's called Little Switzerland, although I suppose technically that would be a bit more of an alpine climb. I've been riding up Stony Hill for many years, but recently I've rather surprised myself. I've climbed it 3 times in the last 2 years, and each time I've done it, I've managed to get a PR, so I must be doing something right. But as I explained to John, I used to live at the foot of Stony Hill 20 years ago, and that was my regular ride, so I would climb up it, do a 30 kilometre loop, and come back home. It would take me roughly an hour or so. Now obviously, way back then, I was far fitter, I was far younger, I was far lighter, and I dare say I was considerably more carefree and handsome. And obviously it was also in the days before Strava and even GPS cycling computers, so I don't have an accurate record of my exact timings. I think it would be very interesting to know how my times now would compare to my times back then. As much as I love the climb going up Stony Hill, I also really love the descent, as it's nice and long. There's some sweeping bends to negotiate. The scenery is absolutely amazing. The surface is beautifully smooth and you can pick up quite a speed going down there. When we got to Petersfield, which is the town at the bottom of the climb, John had done 102 kilometres and I had done 30. Today I needed some shots of me riding my mountain bike, so I dug my old clunker out of the garage and rode it 7 kilometres up to the local village and back, and my goodness was I in for a bit of a shock. Basically, I just didn't expect it to be quite that hard. Okay, the bike itself is really old, it's really heavy, much heavier than any of the road bikes that I own, plus the weather was blowing an absolute hoolie, and I was riding in Plimsoll, so I wasn't making it exactly easy for myself, but it was just really hard. I haven't ridden that mountain bike in quite a while, but I have to admit it still came as quite a shock at how hard it all was, especially considering that I think I'm quite fit at the moment. I had visions of me doing a nice little leisurely ride up to the local village, doing what I needed to do and then coming back. But within about a kilometre or so, I was pushing hard and it was actually really hard work. I didn't take a cycling computer with me, so unfortunately the effort won't register on Strava. But all in all, I did 14 very tough kilometres, which I will include in this week's totals. But what I will say is that if riding a mountain bike is that tough, you off-roaders and commuters now have my utmost respect. Okay, it's put up or shut up time. Let's see if I can ride 100 kilometres today. Wish me luck.
Kilometres in and a very quick refueling stop here in Cosham. From here I'll ride down onto Hayling Island, do a loop and then climb back up Portsdown Hill and then home. Wind today is pretty strong, but luckily for me it's kind of with me for most of the way, although the last 20 kilometres home is going to be pretty hard into the wind. So far not feeling too bad. I can feel it in my legs, I can feel it in my chest, but it's all still pretty manageable. Made it down to Hayling seafront and I've got about another 25 kilometres or so until I'm home, but unfortunately, like I say, they are not going to be easy kilometres. I had a tailwind pretty much all the way to Hayling here, but now I've got to turn my nose into the wind and just grind away, and I've even got a fairly big hill to climb. So yeah, all in all, not a bad day.
And diddle-a-dee, that, boys and girls, is 100 kilometres. Now, if I was a half empty sort of chap, I'd be saying things like, well, it was on a fairly flat route, the wind was more or less behind me, and I'd originally planned to do my first 100 kilometre ride back in the middle of March, and here we are 4 months late. But if I was a half full kind of chap, I'd say, well, diddle-a-dee, that, boys and girls, is 100 kilometres. I was in a little bit of a debate about what bike to take, but I ended up riding the Cannondale today, and obviously that's got the nice sexy new wheels in it. And I have to say, what better way to test them than to go out and ride 100 kilometres. They performed fantastically, they felt amazing, they sounded amazing, they were super smooth, and I even think that my average speed was up. I felt them a little bit in the crosswinds and the headwinds, but when the wind was behind me, I was just flying along. I will be doing a full review of these wheels in a couple of weeks, but for now, I absolutely love them. Now that I'm home, showered and relaxed, I can say that it wasn't the hardest ride I've ever done, but it wasn't the easiest one either. I really started to feel it after the refueling stop at 60 kilometres. When I got back on the bike, my legs started to ache, and then fortunately, as I rode down onto Hayling, the wind was behind me again, so I started to feel a bit better. But the last 20 kilometres were pretty tough, particularly the climb up Portsdown Hill, and the last 10 kilometres I was just turning the pedals over to get home as best I could. And then in the last kilometre I saw a little 5-year-old girl and her dad on bikes, and because it was a slight uphill I didn't even have the strength to catch them up. I did the whole thing in just over 4 hours, so that works out to more or less an average speed of about 25 kilometres an hour. I wanted to do the whole thing in one go, mainly to prove it to myself that I could do it, but also because I could see the weather was starting to close in. At one point I thought it was going to start raining, and that would have made my nice white clean hissy fit shoes all dirty, and I really didn't want that. And that was actually my last ride for the week, bringing this week's totals to: I've ridden 153 kilometres, I've got 6.5 hours of seat time, and I've climbed 900 metres. And that brings the year's total to 3,149 kilometres ridden, 136.5 hours of seat time, and I've climbed 18,913 metres. So if we go over to Strava, we can see that on Monday my fitness score was 56, on Thursday it was 55, and then on Friday it went up to 58. As you can imagine, I'm pretty pleased at doing my first 100 kilometre ride of the year, and I hope to do a few more before we fly out to Mallorca at the end of September. The weather next week is a bit of a mixed bag. The early part is looking a bit cloudy, and then the latter half of the week is looking very hot and sunny, but it's all good cycling weather, so I plan on going out and doing a mixture of longer rides to work on my endurance, plus throwing in there a few shorter, faster rides to build up my speed and my stamina. One piece of housekeeping: we have the Jolly Good Velo Facebook group, and we're rapidly approaching the 1,000th member, so if you'd like to come along and join us, it's a fantastic place to share stories, photos, tips and tricks, or even ask for advice. So if you'd like to join in, I'll leave the link in the description below, and you never know, you might have the honour of being the group's 1,000th member. Thanks for watching.